the age of 14 as part of his hobby of amateur radio. He's the one that delivered the VP8 image analyzer to Jackson and Jumper in 1976 for their work on the 3D work. They proved the Shroud had 3D properties with the use of that machine, and that began his own association with Stirp. He recently founded the Shroud exhibit and museum in White Sands Shopping Mall in Alamogordo, New Mexico. The place where he had been had to close recently, but fortunately we're glad to hear that he has found a new home, and the space there is actually about twice as much as what he had before, so we're glad he was able to keep that going. He graduated from the Light of Christ Institute in May 2005. In June 2009, he was ordained a deacon for the Diocese of Las Cruces, New Mexico, and is assigned to Immaculate Conception Church in Alamogordo. He frequently presents lectures, missions, and spiritual retreats around the country. Reverend Schumacher.
It's very important to know that I agree with the paper that preceded Dr. Soon's paper. Sometimes we see things that aren't exactly what they appear to be. And we've had that happen so many times in our Shroud Museum. And I'll draw your attention over there to the barn owl in the fire area here, okay? That has happened so many times I can't begin to tell you. Well, welcome to the Shroud Exhibit and Museum. We were very blessed with a space donated to us for 5 years and 5 months in a shopping mall in Alamogordo, New Mexico, 1,900 square feet. All the heat, the lights, everything donated by the mall. And the coverage for the insurance necessary for our exhibit was actually donated as well by the Diocese of Las Cruces. That made this possible because my wife and I can't afford to start a museum. We can't afford to rent space, so this has all been just a very generous blessing on behalf of a number of people that we've been able to do this. And our new space is, as was pointed out, about twice as large on the main floor. And it's got 2 floors. And it's got 25 spaces that are like hotel-sized rooms up on the top floor. And so we don't know where this is going, and we don't know what we're going to be able to do. We're going to have to scratch money for paint, so I don't even know how this is going to all develop. But again, a very generous donation has made it possible for us to show an interactive display of a VP8 image analyzer to the public, and to see what the VP8 image analyzer did in 1976 when I delivered it to John Jackson and Eric Jumper at the home of Eric Jumper in Colorado Springs one day. The VP8 image analyzer in our display is pictured there. The screen on the right is the image that you see if you scan the image of the Shroud, which we're using the Shroud, a very excellent image that was produced by Barry Schwartz, properly color illuminated from behind and properly diffuse light balance so that it is uniform lighting with the proper spectrum over the entire surface. That is a beautiful, beautiful image. So when you do that, the Shroud comes out with a graphic plot, which is three-dimensional by its brightness. And you can see two things there. One of them is a cursor going this way, which goes up and down based on the brightness variables in the image. And another cursor that goes the other direction in the image, in this case horizontal, although it looks vertical there, because of the rotation of the isometric plot. So what we see there is a line that's going up and down based on the brightness variations in the image. So if we take a quality image, such as the image that we got from Barry Schwartz, properly illuminate it, protect it from ambient light sources, which is what this box is here, to get all other light that might affect our analysis out of the way, place a properly calibrated video camera, instrumentation camera, not like you just take a snapshot with your Brownie Star Flash, or like you'd walk in there with your camcorder, or even like you'd go in there with your iPhone and take a picture. It has to be something where you're controlling the linearity of the response of the camera sensor to the gray values or brightness values or colorations that are actually physically contained in the image. Otherwise, you've distorted everything. It's that simple. So the acquisition process is extremely difficult and is very demanding. So we have this to protect from ambient light. We have the camera of proper calibration and origin. It has to be oriented so that the plane of the camera is actually parallel to the plane of the image that we're trying to bring into or introduce into the system. Otherwise, you get geometric distortion, like you're taking an oblique picture. Okay? So all of this has to be done in a very ordered fashion. It is photogrammetry. It is not just snapshot imaging. We were blessed to have Dr. Soons come to our facility with some images to be scanned and to be processed. These images have to be top lit. So this box, which is just simply a white reflective surface on the other side, you can buy these at Staples, can be illuminated, and then the light will eliminate, the way it's produced there, will eliminate shadows. And we can actually prove that we have a uniform illumination by testing that through the system. So we have to make sure that the balance of light that's coming from the entire surface to be scanned has to be uniform over the whole area of the image to be scanned. If it's not, you just distorted the brightness. Okay? So if you take a flash picture, for example, in our nice illuminated or shielded box, you find that the flash will reflect back off the image into the camera. So you could not use that image to do the kinds of analysis that we're talking about. So we took an image, this image from Barry Schwartz image of the Shroud, and we put it through the VPA, and two things that you noticed immediately. One is that there's this little bit of a dip right here off the burn area, and it goes flat pretty well, and then it goes across the face, it goes across the hair, and then it comes out to about the same level it is over here, and goes flat until it gets over near the burn area, and then it comes up. And if you look at it in this orientation, it goes flat up in here and stays flat until this area where it gets onto the image on the Shroud, and then goes back down to a flat. And that is very interesting, because that pattern is actually like a parabola, like that, on either side of the Shroud image. So the face would be right there, and this would be a shift in brightness on either side of the face. And you can see that it's more or less flat here, and has that parabola shape. And if you do a thing called density slicing, where you try to group gray values together, some really interesting things start to pop out. One is that this entire area around the head comes out at about the same gray value, reflectance value. It doesn't happen down here outside the body or anywhere else the rest of the way down the body. You'll also see that there's this little change in patterning right here, which is right below the beard. So what does that mean? I don't know. Let's find out, okay? So we're going to do a test. We're going to test his theory. Is the center of this circle oriented over the right eye? Is it larger above the head than it is below the head? Let's start right there. So we put two little graphic dots over the eyes in the actual image. And then we found the center of the circle, and this being a photographic reversal, the right eye is right there. Dead on. So horizontal line through the eyes, vertical line through the center of the circle, bang, right over the right eye, just like he said. Well, let's try that again. So there's another one. There's one that's positive. Bing, right over the right eye, just exactly like it said. And if we do the look with the VP8 imaging, we can see that parabola very clear. There's the circle. And you see that will match and be right over the right eye. Now I had to give this some tilt because I've got tilt in the VP8 image so that we can see the relief at a slight tilt angle. Okay, so is this just the VP8 or is this, is there some other way to do this? Okay? There's a lot of other ways to do this. This was not something that really required the VP8 image analyzer to test. There are some open source image analysis programs that are very good. They're all based on NIH, National Institutes of Health, applications that were written a long time ago, back when I was a kid. Right? Not really. But back when I was a kid in image processing anyway. One of them is GIMP2, another one is ImageJ, is that right? Yeah, ImageJ. All of these have adopted applications from NIH, National Institutes of Health. And of course there's the commercial forms too, Adobe Photoshop and whatever else you might want to choose. And all of those can produce what we just talked about. What I'd really like to see happen someday is some of the GIS and CAD analysis programs, applications, if you will, such as GRAPH6, which is open source, employed to do a correlation of all this information that we've read about and heard about and seen in papers and everything else from all the studies that have been done, especially since 1978. Because I noticed that some of the papers today were just totally ignoring some real science that's been done. Absolutely, totally ignoring it to come up with theories about different things. And I'm sorry, that's not right. If it was good science when it was done, it needs to be respected, and we stand on the shoulders of those who've gone before with legitimate science. So I took GIMP2, and this is very faint, and it's very hard to see, but I did a Gaussian edge enhancement from a digital image received from Barry Schwartz. So it's a digital image. I have the same number set every time I go to process an image. It's not analog. If I translate it from analog, every time I digitize it, I'll get a different answer. I could take an average, but the noise will cause a different answer into the digitization every time. Well, I'm going to start with a digital image that was courtesy of Barry Schwartz. So now I'm dealing with numbers, and they're not going to change. And so if you wanted to repeat this with GIMP2 in your own computer, all you need is the digital image that came from Barry Schwartz. Thank you very much. And what happened? Bingo, dead over the right eye. And by the way, what is that? Don't know what it is. Don't know what writing's on there. I'm just telling you there's a feature there. And it's coincident by its edges and its brightness and hue and saturation are causing that result by a Gaussian transform being worked on this image. So I said, well, okay, all of that's great. He suggested there's some vertical line that's coming up at a slant there below the beard. What does that mean? Okay, let's see if we can see anything by doing a graphic overlay of what he proposes and looking at the image. So I took his little drawing, I added 2 little graphic lines at the appropriate angle, and bang, there it is. Right there. Just like he said. So, is it just a feature? Is it just, it's homogeneous? It has to be, because the Gaussian detection wouldn't have picked it up if it had not been somewhat homogeneous. Does it show up in those other artworks in the same place? Yeah. Then it dawned on me, that not everybody's got a VP8 image analyzer. So what do we do about that? Well, of course, ImageJ and some of these other apps can do isometric projections, and they can use filters to lay over as a mask over the image, and such was done by Ray Downey when he did Is This the Face of Jesus, for example. Okay? But I thought, what about an analog alternative to a VP8 image analyzer? And the answer was right there in my test bench. It's called the Tektronix Waveform Monitor, called the WFM90. Now, anybody in the TV industry, and I mean anybody in the TV industry, knows what a waveform monitor is. What it does is it takes the actual signal coming out of the camera that's going to be broadcast on the air, and it plots it out on an oscilloscope. And if it's a positive plot, such as the one showing on the monitor here, then bright goes up and dark goes down, and everything in between is this stuff in between. And you know what you can do with that? You can, one line at a time, scan it. Take one TV line at a time and scan it to see what the brightness variables are on it. And it's right there, available to anybody who has any access to a waveform monitor, and there are thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of waveform monitors out there in the real world. So anybody that wants to do this test, first of all, you need to have a good image. Secondly, you need to introduce it properly into the video camera. Parallel planes, proper lighting, good reflection, known geometry, known source, then do your work, okay? And so as you go through, what I did was I took my little computer, I got a little Sony Bio. You can do this on any computer that will capture video. It doesn't have to be a Sony Bio. And you take a still snapshot of the image, and then you take a still snapshot of the line within the image, and it's numbered right there. So this is field number 1, line number 113, which would be right about in this area right here. And we can calculate that to know exactly based on our image. So we start at field 1, line number 21 at the very top of the picture, and we just start going. So we're going to go across the image this way, and we're going to follow this brightness variable as we come down into this area right here. Because that's where we're interested in what's happening. So here we go. Boom, boom. Oh, look at that. Went right into a parabola on either side of the image. And bang, 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 all the way down until we get to the end. And what I did was, to know that my calibration was right, I put in a little black strip to cover the image. And that shows up right there at the very bottom, So I know exactly where I am in the picture by the artifact that I put in the picture on purpose, so that I would be able to orient all of these lines relative to the picture. And then you get to end of line number, or end of the field, line number 263, and the next line would be in field 2. Now you have to understand video to be able to understand exactly where you are in the image with a waveform monitor. But it's doing exactly the same thing the VP8 horizontal cursor does. And that's how, basically, John and Eric made a cardboard model, one line at a time, and proved what the VP8 did. It was not anomalous to the machine. It was something unique to the image. So the conclusion is, using various image analysis and measurement techniques and employing graphic overlays, it is my conclusion that the statements made by Dr. Seuss, especially concerning the halo, are demonstrated to be accurate beyond reasonable doubt. And the angle and position of those vertical strokes, also beyond reasonable doubt. Thus, the Mendelian and the Shrouded Corinne are one and the same. Therefore, the Shrouded Corinne existed at a time in accord with the known history of the Mendelian. Period.